Hello, long time no wrap up. Let's just jump right into things. I'm barely even going to do an intro. I'm Holly, your fellow fantasy obsessed book lover, and I'm thinking about going back to monthly wrap ups and TBRs because I really miss doing those. They kept me accountable, and not doing them, I feel like an unorganized reading mess. I thought not doing them could break that booktube formula that I feel like can get stale, but why try to fix something that's not broken? Also, monthly TBR videos in particular are my favorite to watch, so I should do them myself. You know, it only makes sense. Now, typically when I say my plans out loud, my brain will want to rebel and I won't do it, but I hope that's not the case this time. So I will have a June TBR video up, which is very exciting, but before I hit the restart button on that type of content on this channel, I thought I'd go through all the books I have read in the last couple months and haven't talked about yet. There's quite a few because I'm a bad booktuber. The first two I'm just going to mention briefly because I did a whole spoiler-free review videos for them that I highly recommend checking out. The first one being The Shadow of the Gods by Gwen. You guys know I could not wait to jump right into this one. This is his new Viking era inspired epic, and I mean epic fantasy. Just throw some explosions on the screen if I'm not lazy editing this. First to a brand new series. It doesn't connect with the Banished Lands at all. It's so good. He worked his writing magic yet again, focusing on a much smaller group of perspectives that really honed in a lot of detail and personality within such a beautiful and brutal world. If you haven't had the chance to read from this author yet, you can start here. I think that would be a great choice. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. And the second is Son of the Storm. Again, did a whole video for this one. This is an extremely detailed and politically heavy adult fantasy set in an African setting where a giant border wall separates the land and skin color. One day this border closes, no one can get in or out because a yellow skin is rumored to have infiltrated the mainland, and no one has seen one in hundreds of years, and they are deemed absolutely barbaric. And this leads to a forbidden magic resurfacing. If you want a deep dive into rich history in a beautiful African setting, this one is definitely for you. Things do get dense and weighty, but I didn't see that as a negative. I think the author really handles all of this information you're given very well. 4 out of 5 stars, and I'm honestly so excited to see the cover for the sequel because this gets me every single time. Okay, so now let's move on to like the official longer reviews. The Black Tongue Thief. So I was going to do a Should You Read It episode for this, and I decided to scrap it because unfortunately I did not like this one at all. I went into it totally thinking I was going to love it because it had everything I normally enjoy. But yeah, I didn't want a singular video of me just giving constant negative feedback and criticisms. So here we are in a wrap up because I really can't think of much positive. So the Goodreads page for this book is absolutely flooded with praise. So I am definitely the odd one out here. One of those times where I feel like you read a book totally different than everyone else. I'm currently experiencing that. This was just all over the place for me. Every single fantasy element you can think of, I feel like the author tried to mush into every page. There is so much going on that it all just felt pointless. Nothing was motivating me to keep going. Even the epic quest the characters had to complete felt bogged down. Well, bogged down isn't the right words for it. Maybe like aimless or like unproductive. I did really enjoy reading about the cultures of the giants and goblins and the wars they fought in the past. So world building, good. But once that was over and the characters interacted, I noticed that the book kind of reads like a play script. I don't know, but that's just like the vibe I got. It's the first thing I wrote down on my notes when I was reading. Just the way the dialogue is structured, how fast the scenes are one after another. Maybe this would be a great Broadway show. Oh, and the freaking slang the character spoken was a bit too much. It's like just hugely overplayed for me personally. It makes it sometimes impossible to decipher the true nature of what is being said, which is maybe why I couldn't get behind much of the humor that was being displayed. And I love funny fantasy. I mean, Kings of the Wild is one of my favorite books, but I mean, read that instead. And unfortunately gave this 2 out of 5 stars, and that kind of feels generous. It's so unfortunate. I thought for sure I was going to love this one, but not every book is for everyone. I don't know, maybe I should mark this as DNF because I skimmed, I mean skimmed the last 100 pages so badly, like, blah, 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 blah. Okay, I'm done. The Witch's Heart, another one I thought for sure I was going to love. I need to stop doing this because it sets me up for failure, but if there's a book that's getting positive hype and sounds amazing, I can't help but go into it with high expectations. Let's be realistic here. This is a total retelling of the legendary Norse mythology of Angerboda, who is Loki's wife and the mother of his children. Honestly, I thought this was pretty boring at first, where I had hoped that the author would have brought more life to its characters. It was kind of just like reading the original story from a history book almost. I found most of the book was very dull. It kind of read like a simple domestic drama between husband and wife, which wasn't very fun at all. I mean, it did finally pick up around the halfway mark, and I really liked how the author filled in some blanks between the myths leading up to Ragnarok. Angerboda really comes into her own as a character, and from that point on in the story, it did click for me. Overall, I had high hopes, but I was often bored throughout. There were obviously sections where I was very interested, but in the end, it just felt like I was reading a book about a housewife through most of it. And while I say this book is a slow burn, it was also a really quick read, and I did enjoy the writing style. I ended up giving this one 3 out of 5 stars. It's like equal parts good and bad. The Ladies of the Secret Circus. The tables have turned, Constance Sayers. I did not like this author's previous book, A Witch in Time, but when Orbit Books offered a copy of this, I was like, fine, I'll give you a second chance, sheesh. And I'm so glad that I did because I ended up really enjoying this one. I really wish it was marketed a little differently though, because this, it just doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't get me excited. And I know how to change your mind if you feel the same. It's following a circus that is run by a demon from the underworld. Yep, you'd never expect it from looking at the cover, but it dives into much more sinister areas. This is a standalone historical fiction with some magical realism and even some thriller elements. We are introduced to Laura, a descendant of a secret circus family who doesn't have much of a choice. It's her wedding day, her fiancé doesn't show up, he is missing, and Laura spirals down a crazy rabbit hole of mystery and magic that involves her family history. This book is smart. It has such a strong central story driving it along that I ultimately didn't mind the contemporary environment, which I'm typically not fond of. Added bonus was the rich historical detail. I love the story and enjoy the movement from time period to time period. Sayers' ability to set a scene is just plain magical. In addition, the construction of the plot with the use of journal entries that acted as flashbacks could have been totally corny, but it's really well done and super effective. The story gripped me from the start, and I have to give credit to the audiobook. The narration is wonderfully performed. The different accents the narrator uses, which I would have never done in my head if I was reading it on my own. It really transported me to Paris. I don't think I would have liked it as much without the audiobook. I did at times find myself wishing there was, I don't know, a little bit more magic and a bit less realism, but that's just me personally. Also, the characters' reactions to different things kind of were funny and maybe could have been written more seriously, but a solid read that was a nice change of pace to my typical reading taste. I ended up giving this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. That's a world of difference to the DNF I gave this author's previous work. The Accidental Apprentice. Amanda Foody is an author I really like to keep an eye on. The Daughter of the Burning City is a book that I love by her. I enjoyed Ace of Shades, so when I saw she was coming out with a fantasy middle grade, I was really excited. I was like, yes, Amanda, go get it. I thought that was a great path for her to explore. This is literally magical school meets Pokemon. Far more on the Pokemon side of things, but instead of Pokeballs where you keep your companion inside, it's tattoos. And when you're ready to summon your companion, it leaps off your body. It reminds me of a character from Bloody Rose that uses that exact concept. It's really cool. Also, I've never read Nevermore, but I've seen people compare it to that. So we have Barclay, our protagonist. He lost his parents to a magical beast when he was younger and just wants a very boring life. He does not want to be your hero or have any type of adventure. It does lead to a lot of complaining and fussy scenes, but it was a very different twist on your typical fantasy story where you have like that egotistical heroine. Well, when he has to go into the nearby woods, he finds himself suddenly bonded to a beast and thus gets shamed and evicted from his life as a mushroom farmer's apprentice. What follows is a series of magical contests, bullies, crazy teachers, and of course a big boss battle with high stakes. It is definitely not the most original plot by any means. That being said though, I think it was the perfect amount of world building and imagery for the target audience of younger readers. I gave this one 3 stars out of 5, and I would definitely read more from this world for sure. And lastly, I have Among the Beast and Briars. This is a YA fantasy, the Outcry edition by the way, that started out very promising until the romance overtook the plot, and the way the romance becomes to be was really disappointing. It took away the companion part of the story I was really looking forward to. So we have our main character, Karis, who lives in a kingdom that has been in peace after a past king made a deal with the Lady of the Forest surrounding the kingdom hundreds of years ago. Present day, the creatures of the woods suddenly attack and screw everything up, so to speak, which leads to an adventure through the mysterious forest. So it's really tough. There is nothing inherently wrong with this book. I just could not connect in any meaningful way to the characters and plot. It's a great, clean read for those who are maybe just entering the realm of magic and fantasy in books, but the characters and plot twist left something to be desired for myself, and the ending barely wraps up anything at all. I ended up giving this one 2.75 out of 5 stars. There's just too many questions unanswered at the end. A book to breeze through for sure, but it might make you just kind of like, shrug at the end. So that was my mixed bag of book reviews. I had some highs, I had some lows, but we are really getting into the extra exciting part of the year for books. Some very highly anticipated releases, a couple I will be talking about in my June TBR, so if you want to see that, be subscribed and turn on my post notifications so you get notified the instant it goes live. Follow me on Goodreads so you can see which books I'm currently reading. All of that is linked down below in the description box for you, and until we meet again, happy reading.